a US gold standard with gold at $82,000. So in a Twitter debate, Brent Johnson from Santiago Capital shared this chart, which shows the gold price needed to back each country's monetary aggregates. And you can see down the bottom, we've got Canada, China, France, Germany, Italy, the Euro area, Japan, Russia, Switzerland, UK, and the US. Now, let's just focus... Oh, and then you've got the gold in ounces, the M0, M1, and M2. But let's just focus on M2 for a second. So, according to Brent's figures, when you look at the US M2, so US is at $81,977 figure. So, if gold was to be repriced based on the amount of ounces the US owns versus the M2 in circulation, then the gold price needs to be $82,000. Are we going to see $82,000 gold? Well, at some point, possibly. But what a lot of people aren't realizing is that the monetary system has now changed. And it's changing. And a lot of people just don't understand that and can't comprehend it, because all we've known for most of our lives, for those of us who are under 50, is the US dollar as the global reserve currency, and it having no link to gold or any other commodity or any other hard money. And someone who is talking about the monetary system and how it's changing is Zoltan Pozsar. So last weekend, the number one podcast was the Roundtable Insight with Zoltan Pozsar, and everybody was talking about it. I've listened to it twice, and Zoltan, who is known as the short-term rate man, the Eurodollar system man, Eurodollar system is king, US dollar is king. Now he is saying that the monetary system is broken, the money system is changing. And it's changing from west to east. And yet, a lot of the deflationists, a lot of those out there that I have debates with that say that, no, the Eurodollar system is king. The US dollar is king. It cannot be defeated. I'm like, have you not studied monetary history? Do you think that the US dollar will remain the global reserve currency forever? Do you think the Eurodollar system cannot change, that it's just here forever? And well, they don't say anything back to me. So I take that as, yes, they believe that's the case. Zoltan here, who is a expert in the Eurodollar system, says that, no, we are seeing the change right now. So I'll put a link in the description to this, but we'll listen to a couple of minutes of this in what he's talking about here. I'll also put a link in the description below to a Blockworks video with Joseph Wang, the former New York Fed trader, who also talks about Zoltan's Bretton Woods 3.0 or 3.
So that's one aspect of Bretton Woods 3. The other comes from this observation that I just mentioned. If G7 inside money is not what it used to be, and you have to diversify, what else do? I mean, you can buy gold. Because gold is a monetary asset, and in the case of Russia, for example, it's good for them to have a lot of physical gold in the basement of the central bank, because it provides a useful nominal anchor to the currency in situations like this. Also, if it's not just switching from paper money to the physical money, you can also think about Bretton Woods III in terms of alternatives to getting paid for commodities exported. So you can invoice commodity exports in ruble. We've seen that example last week. You can invoice trade between China and Saudi Arabia in terms of oil in renminbi, for example. So it's not only thinking about what else other than G7 inside money to buy gold, but also what other currencies you can invoice things and what other currencies can you start to accumulate surpluses in. And again, the Bretton Woods III idea is that this is a breaking point. Bretton Woods I, everybody knows it. It was the gold link to the dollar. Bretton Woods II was the idea. This is David Folkers Landau and Mr. Dooley, just highlighting this symbiotic relationship between China and the U.S. to China exports, accumulates dollars and invests everything in treasuries. And Bretton Woods III is probably going to be a hybrid of the two, because we are back to physical anchors to currencies, gold and perhaps other commodities, but also not just the dollar, but other currencies. And those are going to be currencies of the East, not currencies of the West.
So there you go. There's a little summary about where Zoltan sees this new monetary system, which is more about hard assets, gold and commodities. So with that, if you guys don't own gold, silver and commodities, you may want to think about it, because the system's changing. The other thing he talks about is like quantitative tightening with central banks, not just the Fed, but as other central banks do quantitative tightening, they're holding US treasuries. Well, that means they're selling US treasuries onto the open market. But also the way the Eurodollar system works, he talks in this podcast about, let's say Glencore want to buy oil, so they'll borrow from, let's say Deutsche Bank. Deutsche Bank creates US dollars. Glencore will use those dollars to buy oil from the Saudis, say, and then the Saudis will use those dollars to go and buy treasuries. So the US dollars created outside of the US in the Eurodollar system generally ends up in US treasuries. And so what does that do? That creates a demand for US treasuries, which pushes the price of the treasuries up and the yields down. Well, if these companies and Saudi, Russia, China, all these countries no longer price their commodities in US dollars, and they price them in Eastern currencies or in gold, well, people are going to have to pay whatever they set the price at, whatever they want, whatever they're selling these commodities in. That's what people are going to have to do. And if they're not going to be using US dollars anymore, that's less demand coming into US Treasury. So what he says is this has US dollar implications. So, this has been coming for some time, but the sanctions on Russia have really fast-tracked this change in the monetary system. And, so I highly recommend you guys listen to this podcast from Zoltan. Really fascinating stuff. And look, if this guy is saying that the monetary system has changed and the monetary system is going back to gold and commodities, then who knows where the price of gold and commodities can go. But it's happening. It's happening. All right, so let's listen now to a short little clip, and I'll put a link in the description below to this. So this is the Blockworks interview between Jack and Joseph Wang, the former New York Fed trader. So let's just have a listen to Joseph discussing what Zoltan was talking about with Bretton Woods III.
Joseph, key to Zoltan's thesis is that the dollar reserve system will eventually fray, and that particularly offshore dollars, Eurodollars, that creation process will stop for reasons I don't exactly understand. And then because there are no Eurodollars, there's no dollars to be recycled back into treasuries, so that will cause interest rates to rise. what am I missing there? And then also sort of how are the mechanics of us moving to a dollar reserve system to a yuan reserve system, a Chinese yuan reserve system, which Zoltan indicates he thinks is possible, if not plausible.
Yeah, that's kind of the second big point that Zoltan's making. We're going to have the world is going to fragment from a unipolar world, and we're going to have a smaller, incipient, and growing RMB system. And Jack, as you mentioned earlier, there's no shortage of people calling for new Bretton Woods over and over again throughout the years. And oftentimes, it actually takes the form of of an RMB system. So, a lot of times, what happens is that when, let's say, the U.S. buys gas or oil or something from a foreigner, or maybe buy goods from China, what the foreigners do is they take those dollars and they have to put them somewhere, and they put them in U.S. Treasuries, and that is a stable demand for U.S. Treasuries, and which is a really good thing because, as you know, the U.S. issues more and more Treasuries every year. We have basically a forever deficit. Right now, it's about $1.5 trillion this year, and it's estimated to be at least $1 trillion every year for forever. So it's good to have someone who's willing to hold those treasuries. If we go into a world where people don't really need as many dollars, and it's not because, it could be because there are alternatives. But if there are fewer people willing to hold dollars, there's fewer people who need to invest them in treasuries, and that has implications for interest rates. If, for example, let's say China or the Middle East are beginning to use another currency like the RMB, then they're going to be looking for alternatives to park their RMB. They're going to have fewer dollars to park, and so there's less demand for treasuries. And I think that's actually a real concern. Before this piece, Zoltan was mentioning that there seems to be a change in the safe haven status of the dollar because the U.S. was willing to confiscate the central bank reserves by Russia. So what that means is that if you are a foreign central bank, like you're Russia or China, you have dollars that you use to support your currency, and you have to put those dollars somewhere. Unlike you or I, they don't really put it at a commercial bank. They usually put it at another central bank. And if you put it at another central bank, you're depositing it with another government. So that's inherently political. And what happened this time is that those reserves basically got confiscated. And by willing to weaponize this, that means in the future, some central banks are going to be more hesitant to be investing dollars in treasuries or in deposits at the Fed. It's a national security issue. Let's say you're like a huge country with a lot of reserves, and maybe you have territorial aspirations that are very important to you, but maybe not frowned upon by the West. Well, you got to be able to survive a world where your multi-trillion reserves get confiscated, right? And the way to do that is to diversify out of dollars. It doesn't have to be to rubles or something else. What Zoltan suggests actually is commodities. And it kind of makes sense. Commodities you own outright in your home, and they're actually useful.
Now, if we listen to Western media, we're told that the whole world is against Russia, that the whole world is sanctioning Russia. Well, on this chart, it's only the countries in yellow that are sanctioning Russia. All the other ones aren't. And what are we being told now when we look at the media is India's now bad. Why? Because they wouldn't go along with the West's sanctions on Russia. That China's bad, that the Saudis are bad, that Brazil's bad. Everyone's bad because they're not going along with the West's sanctions on Russia. So I think the warnings from Zoltan that the monetary system is now changing and that we're seeing a move from west to east. And in particular, we're seeing a move back to hard money, commodities, gold. And we've seen central banks been buying gold hand over fist ever since the GFC, really. Ever since the GFC. And yes, there's been shenanigans going on in the paper market in both gold and silver. But guys, if you can't see this change that's happening and see that the West's shenanigans in tamping down hard money to protect, that G7 money that Zoltan talks about, or the fiat US dollar currency. And if you guys can't see that is now breaking, this is a big, big warning. So I know how I have allocated my portfolio, and I feel that I probably don't even have enough. And what am I talking about? I'm talking about gold, silver, commodities. Stuff that central banks can't create, can't print. That the commercial banks can't print. So, anyway, what do you guys think? Love to see your thoughts and opinions in the comments below. If you like this video, please hit that like button. If you haven't yet subscribed, do so and hit that notification bell. Take care, everyone, and I'll see you all again on another episode of Finance Uncut.